The dust on the moon's surface had not been disturbed in thousands of years. Dr. Kira Voss knelt beside the massive stone archway, her gloved hand trembling slightly as she brushed away the fine gray powder that covered the ancient inscriptions. Above her, the gas giant dominated the sky, its swirling orange and red bands casting an eerie light across the ruins. The rest of the archaeological team worked around her, carefully documenting every detail of the structure they had discovered 3 days ago. Kira was the only human on the expedition. The other 15 members belonged to various species of the Galactic Council, the vast organization that governed most of known space. She had joined the team 6 months ago, grateful for the opportunity to work alongside some of the galaxy's most respected archaeologists. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, having made first contact only 20 years earlier. Most council species still viewed humanity with polite curiosity at best, and mild condescension at worst. Humans were unremarkable, they said. No special abilities, no advanced technology, just another species slowly learning their place in the wider universe. The portal structure before her was anything but unremarkable. It stood 30 meters tall, built from a dark metallic material that had somehow resisted erosion for what the dating equipment suggested was 15,000 years. The archway was wide enough to accommodate ships, and the ground around it showed evidence of extensive construction that had long since crumbled away. This had been a major facility once, perhaps even a hub connecting multiple locations across space. What made Kira's hands shake was not the age or scale of the structure. It was the words carved into the archway's surface. She had spent the past hour running multiple translation programs, checking and rechecking her results, hoping she had made an error. But every scan confirmed the same impossible truth. The inscription was written in multiple languages, including several that predated the council itself. And one of those languages, when translated, mentioned humans by name. Dr. Xanthus approached, his 4 legs carrying his large frame smoothly across the uneven ground. The Valorian was the expedition leader, a renowned scholar who had spent his entire career studying ancient civilizations. His skin was a deep purple color, and his large eyes could see wavelengths of light that humans could not. He lowered himself beside Kira, examining her scanner display. "You appear troubled, Dr. Voss," he said, his voice coming through her suit's translator as a pleasant baritone. Kira pointed to a section of the inscription she had highlighted. "This passage here. I have run it through every translation protocol we have." Xanthus studied the display, his eyes moving rapidly as he absorbed the information. After a moment, he made a sound that Kira's translator interpreted as puzzlement. "This cannot be correct." "I thought the same thing," Kira said. "But I have recalibrated the equipment 3 times. The magnetic field is not strong enough to cause errors of this magnitude. And the word is the same in 7 different ancient languages." She pulled up the translation on her screen, the words glowing in bright blue letters against the darkness of space behind them. The portal builders were human. This inscription is a warning and a promise. It says that humans built this network, that they spanned hundreds of worlds, and that they will return. Those are not my interpretations. Xanthus was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, his movements careful and deliberate. "This is clearly an error. Perhaps the ancient language uses words that coincidentally resemble your species' designation. Or perhaps there was another species that called themselves by a similar name. The humans I know are confined to one star system. They have no records of ever building anything like this. They have no oral traditions of a lost empire." Kira wanted to agree with him. The idea that humans had once built this massive structure, that they had possessed technology far beyond anything the current council could achieve, seemed absurd. But she could not ignore the evidence. "There is more," she said quietly. "We found organic traces in the sealed chamber beneath the portal." The expedition leader turned to look at her fully, all 4 of his eyes focusing on her face. "As certain as I can be with 15,000-year-old samples, I would like permission to send my findings to Earth and to the Council's main research facility." Xanthus considered this for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. Send your report. But I want it made clear that these are preliminary findings only. Over the following 3 weeks, Kira and her team worked tirelessly to document every aspect of the portal ruins. What they discovered made it increasingly difficult to maintain the position that this was simply a coincidence. The technology embedded in the portal structure, though ancient and mostly destroyed, showed design principles that matched human engineering approaches, rather than those of any known council species. The dimensions of the facility's chambers and corridors corresponded to human body proportions. Most significantly, they found a sealed maintenance station deep beneath the portal that contained instructions written in a language that showed clear ancestral links to several modern human language families. News of the discovery spread quickly through council space once Kira's initial report was released. The reaction was mixed. Many found the claim amusing or ridiculous. Humans building a portal network? The same humans who barely had interstellar travel when the council found them? It seemed like a joke, like claiming that prey animals had once hunted predators. But not everyone was laughing. An Arxian computational historian named Veltok became interested in the case. The Arxians were known for their analytical minds and their ability to find patterns in vast amounts of data. Veltok began cross-referencing galactic maps with all known portal sites that had been discovered over the past century. Previous expeditions had found 17 other ruined structures similar to the one Kira's team was studying. They had all been dismissed as remnants of some unknown precursor civilization, interesting archaeological curiosities, but nothing more. When Veltok completed his analysis, he immediately sent his findings to the Council's central database and copied them to every major research institution in known space. What he had discovered was impossible to ignore. The portal locations were not random. They formed a network, a carefully planned infrastructure connecting resource-rich systems, strategic locations, and habitable worlds across a volume of space that encompassed roughly 1/3 of current Council territory. The network showed clear signs of having been designed by a single civilization, with sophisticated knowledge of galactic geography and stellar mechanics. More troubling was the center point of this network. Veltok had used standard cartographic algorithms to find the geometric center of all portal locations. The result placed that center point within 10 light-years of Earth, the human homeworld. The portals radiated outward from human space in a pattern that suggested systematic expansion over thousands of years. This was not the work of a minor civilization that had built a few scattered outposts. This was the infrastructure of an empire. The galactic community's response shifted from amusement to concern. Political leaders and military commanders began asking uncomfortable questions. If humanity had once been this powerful, what had happened to them? Where did all that knowledge and technology go? And most importantly, did modern humans know about their past? Were they hiding their true capabilities, pretending to be primitive while secretly rebuilding their ancient strength? Admiral Korvax of the Drexian fleet became the most vocal advocate for what he called aggressive caution. The Drexians were a militaristic species, not cruel or expansionist, but deeply focused on security and order. Korvax was a respected commander who had served for 40 years, earning a reputation for careful thinking and strategic insight. He did not call for immediate action against humanity, but he made his concerns clear in a statement broadcast throughout Council space. "We must consider the evidence before us," Korvax said, his scaled face serious on screens across hundreds of worlds. 15,000 years ago, humanity controlled territory that makes our current holdings seem modest. They possessed technology we still cannot fully understand. Then something happened. Either they were defeated by a force powerful enough to completely destroy their empire, or they fell victim to internal collapse. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. Now 15,000 years later, humanity has rediscovered space travel. They have joined the Council, and they have done so with remarkable speed. Their technological advancement since first contact has been faster than any other species in recorded history. Is this because they are naturally gifted? Korvax's statement sparked intense debate. Some agreed with his concerns, arguing that humanity represented a potential threat that needed to be contained before they became too powerful. Others insisted that modern humans had no knowledge of their ancient past and should not be punished for the actions of ancestors who lived 15 millennia ago. The Council found itself divided, with member species taking strong positions on both sides. Ambassador Lucas Grant represented humanity at the Council chambers on the capital world. He was a career diplomat, experienced and careful in his words, but even he seemed shaken by the discovery. When called before the full council to address the portal findings, he spoke with obvious sincerity. "I understand the council's concerns," Grant said, standing before the assembled representatives of 300 species. "I wish I could provide a simple explanation that would put everyone's minds at ease, but I cannot. The human government has no knowledge of an ancient empire. Our historical records extend back approximately 12,000 years, showing consistent development from simple agricultural societies to our current level of technology." He gestured to a display showing images of the portal ruins. "However, I also cannot deny the physical evidence. These structures exist. They bear markers consistent with human origin. The genetic samples, while degraded, suggest human ancestry. My government proposes a joint investigation. Let human researchers work alongside council scientists to understand what happened. If humanity once spanned the stars, we need to know why that ended and how all memory of it was lost." After 3 days of deliberation, the council agreed to Grant's proposal, though with significant restrictions. A joint research team would be assembled, with equal representation from human and council scientists. The team would have access to all known portal sites and would be authorized to conduct surveys on Earth itself, searching for any trace of an advanced precursor civilization. The council also insisted that a military observer be assigned to the project. Admiral Korvax volunteered for this role, stating that he wanted to see the evidence firsthand, rather than relying on second-hand reports. Kira found herself appointed as the human co-leader of the expedition, working alongside Dr. Xanthus. She was both honored and terrified by the responsibility. The fate of humanity's relationship with the council might depend on what they discovered. The team spent 6 months visiting every known portal site, cataloging similarities and differences, building a comprehensive picture of the network's original scope and capabilities. The evidence continued to mount. Every site showed the same human markers, the same design principles, the same technological signatures. This had definitely been a human creation, though on a scale that seemed impossible for the primitive humans currently living on Earth. Then they returned to Earth to conduct deep geological surveys. What they found in the first month of searching seemed to support Korvax's worst fears. Buried beneath kilometers of rock and sediment, they discovered facilities that showed signs of deliberate burial rather than natural coverage. These installations were ancient beyond measure, their construction techniques matching those used in the portal network. They contained fragmentary records, damaged by time and the tremendous pressure of the Earth above them, but still partially readable. Admiral Korvax was present when they breached the largest of these facilities, located deep beneath what was now the Pacific Ocean floor. His expression was grim as the team carefully extracted data storage devices from sealed chambers. "This confirms it," he said quietly. "Humanity did build the portals. They did span hundreds of light years. Whatever happened to them was catastrophic enough that they buried their own technology this deep." Kira shook her head. "I do not believe my government is lying about this. The surprise and confusion among human leaders has been genuine. But I agree that these facilities were buried deliberately. Look at the way the chambers are sealed, the redundant protection systems, the sheer depth. This was not hidden by accident or natural disaster. It took 3 weeks to extract and restore enough data from the storage devices to piece together a coherent picture. When they finally succeeded, the story that emerged was not what anyone had expected." Kira sat with Dr. Xanthus and Admiral Korvax in a secure laboratory, reviewing the translated records in stunned silence. The records told of a human civilization that had achieved everything any species could want. They had built the portal network over a period of 3,000 years, connecting hundreds of worlds in a vast empire. They had eliminated disease and extended lifespans to centuries. They had achieved abundance that freed every human from want or need. Art, science, and philosophy flourished. From the outside, it must have seemed like paradise. But the records also described a growing problem. Over thousands of years, humanity became increasingly dependent on technology they no longer fully understood. The portal network required constant maintenance by specialists with highly technical knowledge. As life became easier and more comfortable, fewer people were willing to undergo the difficult training required to become those specialists. The technical class began to shrink, and with it, humanity's ability to maintain their own infrastructure. Innovation stagnated. Why improve upon systems that already provided everything anyone needed? The very success of ancient human civilization became its weakness. When critical systems began to fail due to lack of proper maintenance, there were not enough people with the knowledge to repair them. Attempts to train new specialists failed because the foundations of understanding had eroded over generations. People knew how to use the portals, but not how to build them. They could operate the technology, but not create it. The records described a period called the Councils of Reckoning, a series of gatherings where human leaders from across the empire debated their future. Some argued for massive educational initiatives to restore technical knowledge. Others proposed simplifying technology to make it more maintainable. But a growing faction argued for something far more radical. This faction believed that humanity's technological empire had made them weak and dependent. They argued that the only way to create a truly sustainable civilization was to start over from the beginning, not by waiting for systems to fail catastrophically, but by choosing to dismantle everything in a controlled manner. They proposed what they called the Great Abandonment. "They chose this," Korvax said, his voice filled with disbelief. Kira nodded slowly, still processing what she was reading. According to these records, the decision was not unanimous. It took generations of debate, but eventually, a majority of humanity agreed. They believed that only by earning their technology through their own efforts, step by step, could they create a civilization that would last. Inherited power had made them fragile. The records describe the implementation of the Great Abandonment in detail. It took 500 years to complete. Colonies were systematically evacuated back to Earth. The portal network was shut down, and the portals themselves were deliberately collapsed to prevent reactivation. Technology was cataloged and then destroyed or buried so deeply that only a civilization capable of developing advanced technology independently could possibly find it. Educational systems were restructured to eliminate all references to the star-spanning past. The most difficult part, according to the records, was ensuring that future generations would have no knowledge of what had been lost. Oral traditions were actively suppressed. Written records were destroyed. The last technical specialists, the ones who understood the full scope of what humanity was giving up, committed themselves to completing the abandonment and then taking their knowledge to their graves. Dr. Xanthus spoke for the first time in nearly an hour. The inscription on the portal. It was not a threat or a warning to other species. "Yes," Kira said. "They left those inscriptions deliberately, knowing they would eventually be found. The message was meant to inform future humans, when they finally rediscovered space travel, of what their ancestors had done and why." The revelation sparked chaos throughout Council space. When Ambassador Grant presented the findings to the full Council, the chamber erupted in argument. Some species found the idea incomprehensible. To voluntarily give up such power seemed like madness. Others saw it as proof that humanity was fundamentally unstable and unpredictable. Admiral Korvax stood to address the assembly. "This discovery does not ease my concerns. It increases them. We now know that humanity is capable of achievements far beyond what we believed possible. We also know they are capable of making decisions that seem irrational from any conventional strategic perspective. A species that would abandon their own empire might decide to do something equally extreme in the future." But Veltok, the Arxian historian who had first mapped the portal network, disagreed strongly. He requested permission to speak and was granted the floor. "I understand Admiral Korvax's concerns," he said, "but I believe we are missing the true significance of what ancient humanity did. They looked at their empire and saw that it was failing." Veltok brought up a display showing the portal network overlaid on current Council territory. "Consider what this means. Ancient humanity chose long-term survival over short-term power. They valued genuine strength, earned through effort, over inherited glory. How many civilizations in history have shown such wisdom?" The debate continued for days. Ambassador Grant maintained careful neutrality, neither defending nor condemning his ancestors' choice. He simply presented it as historical fact and reminded the Council that modern humans had no knowledge of this past until the portals were discovered. Holding contemporary humans responsible for decisions made 15,000 years ago seemed fundamentally unjust. However, Grant also acknowledged the Council's legitimate concerns. The inscription promised humanity's return. Whether modern humans intended to reclaim their ancient territories or not, The existence of these ruins and the story they told would forever change how other species viewed humanity. The implications could not be ignored. As the council prepared to vote on how to respond to these revelations, Kira made one final discovery that changed everything. She had been reviewing the deepest levels of the buried facility beneath the Pacific, areas that had not yet been fully explored. In a sealed chamber protected by multiple redundant systems, she found a recording device that had somehow survived 15 millennia intact. The recording showed a woman, clearly human, sitting in what appeared to be a laboratory. She was elderly, her face lined with age and weariness. When she began to speak, the translation systems identified her language as an ancient precursor to modern English. "My name is Dr. Helena Cross," the woman said. "I am one of the last technical specialists, and I am recording this message for future generations of humanity. If you are watching this, it means you have rediscovered space travel and found the ruins of what we built." Dr. Cross explained that the Great Abandonment was not meant to be permanent isolation. The ancient humans knew, with high probability based on their understanding of stellar evolution and planetary formation, that other intelligent species would eventually arise and spread across the stars. They left the portals and inscriptions not as threats, but as context for when humanity and these other species finally met. "We were alone in the galaxy," Cross said, her expression sad. "For 3,000 years, we searched and found no one. That loneliness was destroying us. We had no peers, no rivals, no other perspectives to challenge our assumptions. We became complacent and stagnant." She leaned forward, her eyes intense despite her age. The Great Abandonment was designed to solve two problems. First, it forced future humanity to earn their technology rather than inherit it, making them stronger and more resilient. But second, and equally important, it gave the universe time to populate itself with other civilizations. "When you return to the stars, you will not find an empty galaxy to claim," Cross continued. "The inscription on the portals promises that humans will return. But return does not mean reconquest or reclamation. It means rejoining the galactic community as one civilization among many, bringing the lessons we learned from 15,000 years of rebuilding to share with others who have their own hard-won knowledge to contribute." The recording ended with Cross looking directly at the camera. "To the other species you will meet out there, tell them we meant no threat. Tell them we hoped for friendship. And to my fellow humans watching this, remember that what we gave up willingly, so that you could have something better." When Ambassador Grant presented this recording to the council, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted dramatically. The fear and suspicion that had dominated the debates began to dissipate. Admiral Korvax, who had been the loudest voice calling for containment of humanity, stood and requested permission to speak. "I have spent weeks arguing that humanity represents a threat," Korvax said. "I believed the inscription on the portals was a warning of invasion, but Dr. Cross's message changes my understanding completely. Ancient humanity did not leave a threat. They left an invitation to partnership." He paused, his expression thoughtful. "I have commanded fleets for 40 years. I have studied military strategy and the nature of power extensively, and I can say with confidence that what ancient humanity did required more courage and wisdom than any military victory. To voluntarily give up such power, to trust that future generations would be strong enough to rebuild, and to design that rebuilding to result in partnership rather than domination, that is remarkable. That is not the action of a dangerous species." The council voted 3 days later. The result was overwhelming. Humanity would be accepted as full members of the council with no restrictions or special oversight. More than that, several council species expressed genuine admiration for what ancient humanity had done. The story of the Great Abandonment became known throughout council space, not as a cautionary tale about fallen empires, but as an example of wisdom and foresight. 6 months after the vote, Kira stood once again before the portal ruins where the journey had begun. The site had been designated as a protected historical monument, and scholars from dozens of species now visited regularly to study the ancient human engineering. The gas giant still dominated the sky above, its orange and red bands unchanged by the passage of time or the weight of history. Dr. Xanthus joined her at the base of the portal, his 4 legs carrying him carefully across the dusty surface. "You have been quiet lately," he observed. Kira shook her head. Not troubled, just thinking about what my ancestors gave up so that I could be here. They could have tried to hold on to their empire, to force it to work through sheer will, but they chose something harder. And their trust was well placed, Xanthus said gently. Modern humanity earned their way back to the stars. You did not inherit your technology or your place in the council. Kira looked up at the portal, its massive archway still impressive despite 15,000 years of erosion. The inscription was still visible, the words that had started this entire journey carved deep into the ancient metal. They no longer seemed ominous or threatening. They were simply a message from one generation to another, across an almost incomprehensible span of time. The humans will return, the inscription said. And in a way, they had. Not as conquerors reclaiming lost territory, but as partners joining a community that had grown and flourished in their absence. The portal stood not as a monument to past glory, but as a bridge between what humanity had been and what they had become. Veltok arrived shortly after, his analytical mind still fascinated by the patterns he had discovered in the portal network. He had become friends with Kira over the months of investigation, and she valued his perspective on what they had found. He stood beside her, looking up at the structure. I have been studying the Council's history, Veltok said, comparing it to what we know of ancient humanity. Do you know what I find most interesting? The Council has existed for 8,000 years. In that time, we have had conflicts, certainly, but we have never experienced the stagnation that ancient humanity described. Kira considered the question. Exactly, Veltok said. Ancient humanity was alone. No matter how vast their empire grew, it was still one species, one perspective, one way of thinking. The Council thrives because we challenge each other, because we bring different ideas and approaches to every problem. Your ancestors understood this, even though they never experienced it themselves. Dr. Xanthus nodded slowly. That is perhaps the greatest wisdom in their decision. They recognized that isolation, even prosperous isolation, was ultimately a weakness. Ambassador Grant had come to the portal site to join them for a ceremony marking the formal designation of the ruins as a monument. He stood apart from the group for a moment, looking at the structure with an expression that mixed pride and sadness. When he finally joined them, he spoke quietly. My government asked me to convey a message on behalf of humanity, Grant said. We want the Council to know that we understand the gift our ancestors gave us. They could have left us their technology, their knowledge, their empire. Instead, they left us something more valuable. He paused, emotion evident in his voice. We honor their sacrifice by being worthy of it. We return to the stars not to reclaim what was lost, but to build something new alongside the civilizations that have arisen in our absence. The inscription says humans will return. We have returned. The ceremony that followed was simple but meaningful. Representatives from 30 council species attended, along with a delegation of humans from Earth. They placed a new marker beside the portal, this one written in both ancient human languages and modern council standard. It read simply, Here stands a bridge between past and future, between isolation and community, between inherited power and earned strength. May all who visit remember that sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing what to let go. As the ceremony concluded and the attendees began to depart, Kira remained behind for a few more minutes. She placed her hand on the portal's surface, feeling the cool metal that had endured for 15,000 years. Somewhere beneath this moon's surface, in sealed chambers that might never be fully excavated, lay the complete records of what humanity had once been. But Kira found she was not particularly interested in excavating all of it. Her ancestors had made their choice for good reasons. They had looked at their magnificent empire and seen the flaws that would eventually destroy it. They had the courage to abandon that empire and trust that their descendants would build something better. Kira did not need to know every detail of what had been lost. What mattered was what humanity had gained through the journey back. Admiral Korvax approached her before leaving, his scaled face thoughtful. Dr. Voss, I want to apologize for my initial reaction to these discoveries. Kira smiled at him. You were trying to protect the Council, Admiral. There is no shame in caution when faced with the unknown. and your willingness to change your position when presented with new evidence shows wisdom. Korvac studied the portal for a long moment. I have been thinking about what we learned. The Great Abandonment was not just about humanity. It was about creating conditions for a healthy galactic community. Your ancestors gave up their power partly so that other species would have room to grow and develop without being overshadowed by an existing empire. That is a generous interpretation, Kira said, though I think you are right. Ancient humanity was not just thinking about themselves. The Admiral nodded slowly. The Council will be better for having humanity as members, not because of what your ancestors built, but because of what they chose to abandon, and why. That kind of wisdom is rare. As the last ships departed from the moon, carrying away the representatives and researchers, Kira took one final look at the portal. The setting sun of the system's distant star cast long shadows across the ruins, highlighting the inscription that had started everything. The words seemed different now, freed from the weight of fear and misunderstanding that had initially surrounded them. The humans will return. It was not a threat or a warning. It was a promise kept across 15,000 years, a message from ancestors to descendants that they had faith in what humanity would become. And that promise had been fulfilled, not through the recovery of lost power, but through the patient rebuilding of civilization from its foundations. Modern humanity had earned their place among the stars. They had done so without the crutch of inherited technology, without the easy path of recovered knowledge. Every advance had been fought for, every discovery had been earned. And in doing so, they had become exactly what their ancestors hoped they would be. Strong enough to stand as equals among other civilizations, wise enough to value partnership over dominance, and humble enough to learn from those who had walked their own difficult paths to the stars. As her ship lifted off from the moon's surface, Kira looked back at the portal one last time. It would stand there for thousands of years more, a testament to what humanity had been, and a reminder of what they had chosen to become. The portal was not an ending or a beginning, but a bridge connecting past and future, showing that sometimes the greatest achievement is not in what you build, but in what you are willing to let go. The galaxy spread out before her ship, full of possibilities that ancient humanity could only have dreamed of. They had been alone in a vast empty cosmos. Their descendants inherited a vibrant community of hundreds of species, each with their own stories, their own struggles, their own wisdom to share. The trade had been worth it. The sacrifice had meaning. And the promise inscribed on the portal had been fulfilled in ways that went beyond simple words. Humanity had returned to the stars, not as conquerors, not as the inheritors of a lost empire, but as partners ready to contribute to something greater than any single civilization could achieve alone. And in that return, in that choice to build rather than reclaim, they had honored their ancestors more profoundly than any amount of recovered technology ever could. The portal stood silent beneath the gas giant's glow, its inscription unchanged but its meaning transformed by understanding. The warning had become an invitation. The threat had become a promise. And the return, when it came, had brought not conquest, but community. Not domination, but partnership. Not an ending, but a beginning of something ancient humanity had only been able to imagine. A galaxy united not by force, but by choice, where humanity claimed their place not through inheritance, but through merit, joining others who had earned their own positions through similar struggles and triumphs. In the end, the portal proved to be exactly what Dr. Helena Cross had intended, a bridge between what was and what could be. A reminder that true strength comes not from holding on to power, but from knowing when to release it, and a testament to the profound faith ancient humanity had placed in descendants they would never meet, but trusted completely to be worthy of the stars.